Good morning. Welcome. Hi, Leanne. We are listening to the Tahitian ukulele, or also found in other islands, Cook Islands. Saw some at Festpac this week, and it's very interesting. They have the hole in the back, so you have to strum really hard for the volume. And it's very upbeat. Hi, Alex.
Good morning.
Good morning, Alice. Welcome. Is the volume okay today of the music? You can still hear my voice? Great. Hi, Ro. Awesome. The song ended. I'm going to start it over. That's me. A couple more minutes for people to filter in. Has everyone had a chance to check out Festpac this week? As people come in, you can change your Zoom name to your name, pronouns, organization if you'd like. It's called I've heard it referred to as the Tahitian ukulele, although it probably has another name. I've also heard it referred to as the ukulele banjo because of the way it's double strung, I think. Hi, Rufino. I know, we get to be here. It's like a special time. Just walk over to the convention center from where I'm staying. Alrighty. Got about 14 people. Maybe people will continue to filter in, but I'll just get started on the opening part of today's. Okay, good to know. Hi, Noel. Yeah, we'll start with the introductions and the agenda. So we will have the welcome circle as usual, and then we'll spend the first half of today really getting into the working group topics, getting updates, because both the defining key terms and mapping gardens working group met last Friday, so we'll give updates on that. And then I know that there's some updates regarding public housing gardens, but we'll also announce another call to focus in on that. And then we'll go into breakout rooms into these interest areas, including these three, but also others. I've perfected the Zoom breakout room method, so hopefully that won't be an issue this time. And then at the second half of today, I will be presenting on the city and county's community gardening program that I didn't have time for last time. And then we'll close. And unfortunately today, I am not able to stay on for 30 minutes afterwards. I have to rush off to another thing. But if there is interest, I could make somebody else host who could continue holding the space. So let's get started. Like I said, change your Zoom name, please. And then in the chat, Question that it's kind of meta, but the question I have for you is what questions you have for this work, about this network, about increasing access to food gardens in general. Are there any pressing curiosities or questions that you have in your work that you maybe find challenging? Um, for example, a question that I often grapple with is how the community gardens, especially within the city and county, can support or might be informed by land back movement. I don't know. That's a pressing question for me. So you can think about any pressing questions you might have and put them in the chat for posterity for me to think about as well, especially if you have questions about the network.
Anna, I've asked you this before, and I'm sorry that I'm asking you again, but can you explain the difference between this and Hui Māla I?
Yes, yeah. Thank you for asking that. Um, in the past few sessions, I'll take like a minute at the beginning to give a background and what the difference is, but I didn't plan to do that today. So if that's a curiosity, then I can definitely do that. Hui Mala'ai Food Garden Hui was founded about 2.5 years ago with organizations, nonprofits, businesses, individuals who were connecting on this topic of increasing access. And it was really spearheaded by Susan Mercado. And she had this vision of increasing community gardens across the islands. And in the past couple of years, a lot of the work has been actually funding beds at different sites at housing associations, at the Philippine consulate, for example. So it's been very, oriented around getting beds in the ground, and that's been really great. And then this network formed when there's some organizational change in Hui Mala'ai. We're actually having a session next week to, re-envision our purpose and mission and structure. And so while we're doing this shifting and transformation and, like understanding what the role is and what the purpose is, this larger idea of a larger network, a statewide network that was open to everyone who's working in this space, just as a learning network, really to share ideas and challenges and resources emerged. And so Hui Mala'ai kind of consider a concentric circle, well, not concentric, a circle that overlaps um, with the larger statewide network. And if that's still confusing to you, that's fine because it's still confusing to us and we're still going to figure out how that relationship is and if maybe Hui Mila becomes the larger network, et cetera. So I hope that's helpful.
And if I can add,
Yes, please.
Anna, so I'll add that the intention of Hui Mala'ai was very out of pure passion, right? To just really get food gardens out into the community, something tangible for people to think about sustainable practices for our state. And it had like a huge vision to reach statewide, but because we were so small, we had no funding, we still have no funding. We're still trying to figure out how we can move in that scale. We're very Oahu strength centric right now, so it's very very, very, very tiny. And when you don't have that capacity, we had to figure out, okay, how do we get more people involved? So Anna had a great idea where, well, actually, a number of us, not just Anna, had a great idea. Why don't we open it up to a larger network? Maybe the network can really figure out what are some of the key strategies that we could hui together on, and not just be Hui Mala'ai, maybe, So Hui Mala'ai is gonna still figure out their role. We might meld into this Hui if that's the mission and vision alignment. So we're all kind of figuring out what is best for getting food gardens across the state. I hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Joe. Awesome. Yeah, we'll keep asking these questions going forward. I'll share the screen again, and this might be helpful to this next slide. It's just a quick overview of the Food Gardens Network. We have this document, it's a working document with the proposed purpose and structure, and it's really meant to be worked and reworked as people join, as we start to get an understanding of who we are and what we want to do. So that chat or that link I'll put in the chat. It's actually in the resource folder, so I'll put the resource folder in the chat because there's a lot of other things in there too. And really, I also like to add in here the values of impact networks from this book that I've been working from, sort of to ground us in like why we do this work collaboratively and across sectors, across organizations, across spaces, and different kinds of gardening models. And I think that we haven't really had a chance as a network either to, well, here I'll go to the next slide. So we have these core components of collective impact that James presented on a few sessions ago. And the first one is common agenda. All participants have a shared vision for change, including a common understanding of the problem and a joint approach to solving it through agreed upon actions. And I recognize that we're moving forward in these like action areas, these, public housing or data and mapping or defining key terms, and we haven't really necessarily identified our common agenda. So this is something to keep in mind, and maybe we'll have an upcoming session to really hone in on this. All right. Any comments on that before we go into updates from the working groups? No. Okay. So, like I said, that there were two groups that met last Friday, defining key terms and mapping gardens. Are there folks here who were involved in those and would like to share back on what was discussed, any outcomes that anybody? I have the links to, can you click, if you put the mouse on your screen, can you click the link? No, I can, but that's probably because I'm the host here. I'll put these links in the chat. These are the meeting notes from defining key terms. And these are the meeting notes from the mapping garden session. I don't actually see a lot of folks who were here today who were there before. So if nobody else is volunteering to give us a recap of those, I'll get started. And of course, anyone who was present can add to it. But in the defining key terms, it was really great actually. Someone suggested taking time to write down just in our shared Google document terms that that we might feel we need to define going forward. And right, it wasn't necessarily a session on making actual definitions, but really just what would we need to be able to have a shared agreement on for our network to move forward. And if you go into that document, which I see a lot of people are there, there's a lot of, I can even share this screen. A lot of terms that came to mind. City supported community gardens, identifying the different kinds of programs, perhaps. What's the difference between community garden and communal garden? What is an accessible garden? Maybe that's different than even an ADA compliant garden versus universal design. And food garden typology. We also talked about, do food gardens include medicinal plants? Well, probably they should. And if we're talking about equity in our work and in our purpose, how do we define equity? And who are the populations we're prioritizing? Are we, I know some people use frontline community, others vulnerable or marginalized, which have their own fallback and pros and cons. And we also talked about other items that we should have a shared understanding in general, because it's just sparked more conversation about that. So, like, how are we going to structure our governance and make decisions? Where are some areas of overlap with other networks? Last session, we did have three different networks: the homegrown network, the farm to school network, and the early childhood education network, right? Somebody here can correct me on that one, Noel, presenting on those very relevant networks, and we want to, make an effort not to do duplicate work, but actually work together across networks. And then we also, and this was related to the follow-up call on like mapping gardens, but we were discussing what would we want to include in a list or a map of gardening opportunities. And if we are asking people to be on this list, what attributes should we capture? So feel free to peruse this document and add to it. Anything I may have missed from those who are present?
No,
I
think
did.
you captured
Sorry.
it well, Anna.
Okay, I did kind of try and synthesize a little bit of that discussion. If we are reaching out to different, people to participate in this network, or people to be on the on a map, of gardening opportunities, then what, who are we including, or who should we be reaching out to? And I think we all kind of landed on being as inclusive as possible, as long as isn't, for example, home gardens would be unrealistic to map at this time, but that might be another project. And so I tried to synthesize it into this. And remember, I took the people's garden kind of structure and then created one that might fit for this network. The Hawaii Food Gardens Network connects people across the islands who are interested in creating, promoting, supporting, or otherwise learning about increasing access to local food, sustainability, and community building through the art of gardening. Food gardens, as defined by the members of this network, which is yet to be finalized, can take many forms, including community gardens. Gardens are small-scale farms that are managed communally rather than the allotment style, just as another example. Gardens that grow food or medicinal plants. Food planting projects on private or public lands, but with an element of community involvement, again. And then an educational demonstration garden, school gardens, food forests, and food forest gardens, both formal and guerrilla food planting projects. Okay, and Kukui, you put in the chat, membership is a governance question. So governance a priority question. That's a good point. Maybe that's why these definitions also kind of fell to the forefront.
I think there was a question in the chat earlier about how institutions can kind of help. And so also noticing if mapping is something of interest for the city to support, that would be interesting to know. And then, I mean, there's many ways to connect communities. And so, I guess also under the idea of governance, or maybe a separate pillar, is communications. And, what is the communication strategy of this group? And how does it, enhance and amplify the work? Because this is, clearly the mapping is a task. That's a big task, but, I think it can serve a lot of purposes under the idea of connecting communities. And, let's acknowledge ourselves, like the people that are in the work. So we have a farm, but we also have a garden within the farm that we invite people to partake in, mostly young people from our community. It's definitely food growing. So all of the food goes to either our markets or to folks who take care of the garden. But it is a community resource. And so like internally, right, it's a number, it's a metric for us to see how this network helps this movement, but also like externally, it is a resource for our community. So this idea of a map, however it is envisioned, can be like I don't know, a project that kind of helps us to check a lot of different things about the health of this movement, like and it's, if we're saying this is the impact, then like how does it like align to the impacts that we want to present to our for our communities. So
Thank you for that. Absolutely. It's also, actually, I'm going to go into the meeting notes from the mapping meeting, because that's one thing we asked is like, well, what's the purpose of the map? One, is it so people can easily access opportunities to get engaged with gardening and growing their own food or supporting in some way? And then also it's to measure the health of the movement, like you're saying. And if we're trying to expand access, then do we have a baseline understanding of what access even looks like, and geographically and otherwise? So
Can I
anyone,
say something?
go ahead, yes, please.
Okay, I'm Wayne. Sherry Casetta and I are involved with that. Aya intermediate, her school needs help with her aquaponics and her she planted a few things, probably close to 100 trees and plants by now on campus in a couple of years. So, but the thing is, maintenance. Who's going to trim it? Who's going to make sure it's watered during the summer vacations? And janitors don't want they're already fully tasked. So I'm just saying, volunteers are needed for. Can't we work something out, or maybe one of the priorities should be help the local schools start something, because I'm coming. She's already a teacher. She's with Sarah Club and everything. But I'm coming from the community side, where I'd like to teach, or not teach, but I'd like to have preschool, kindergarten, first grade. My agenda is how can we get those very early elementary kids to have a system and something established in DOE's core curriculum in their curriculum at those early grade levels to have engage activities with the parents, because gardening is one thing because they're going to see what they've sowed and take care for and hopefully fruit and enjoy together. I think that's a wonderful way to start it, because I couldn't initially what I wanted. See, I've been with the PTAs for over 25 years and still stepped down from the high school PTA actually as president. And I'm thinking I'm gonna have an effective anti-bullying thing where we can have peaceful classes and kids want to learn a healthy environment for school in general, kind of like what private schools maybe have. But everybody says it's impossible, but I don't think so. Not in the Aya community, and definitely not in Hawaii. Hawaii should have something like that. And I mean, they're doing it at the charter schools anyway, and that's public. So we got to step it up one more notch and put it in our core curriculum, which I'm working on with getting the right people in our school complex. And therein lies a lot of issues because there's so much layers to go through. But with patience and perseverance and programs like this, I really believe this is one way. If you can imagine a preschooler bringing in, or a kindergartner bringing a seedling and trying to make that survive and have the parents involved. I mean, we need a buy-in from the parents, which that should be a pack, kind of like a pack sign up. When your kid comes to the school and gets free preschooling, this is what we expect you to do. I mean, that, so schools need the volunteers is what I'm saying, and we can start that way. And as they matriculate, get into intermediate, they'll get aquaponics, hopefully in elementary one day, and they'll learn about other ways to farm besides in a raised bed garden or something, or on the ground.
I think
But it's
this
so much
is,
science,
yeah.
everything involved with school. They can revolve the whole school curriculum on about taking care of the earth and water and respect for each other. That's the main goal for me. I want everybody to have respect. Some people can work harder than others. Some people can plan better than others, but we all can work as a team and value each other.
I appreciate the attention to the school garden and the need, especially for volunteers in that time. I think even Shannon, is in the call, yeah. So if and Noel, are you still here? If you want to speak to this, there's Wayne, were you in the call on Friday about mapping gardens?
Yes.
So yeah, so there is this really great effort Shannon's taking on to map with
Oh.
policy map
Okay.
the opportunities for early childhood
Mhm.
education providers who might not
Mhm.
even have schools. They might just be going, into the home, or maybe they have schools and school places, but they don't have like garden areas. And so having
Yeah.
mapping resources for really young children to get involved in these things is going to be a really great project. So we're definitely trying to find alignment with that. I also
Yeah.
wonder what the challenges are for getting just any volunteer onto school property, given the
Mhm.
safety issues. I know that there have
Yeah.
to be background checks sometimes. So
Yeah, all kind of things, right?
yeah, a lot of,
So yeah, I appreciate doing this privately, kind of like for first to make sure the program works, and then we present a whole package, or kind of warm them up now and get to, yeah, we'll warm them up. I guess that would be the best thing, is in my experience, versus just telling a school or even a school complex, how's about we do this? Yeah, no, no, yeah, you know what? We're doing the right thing right now as you're doing it. I'm patient. This is gonna take several years to really do something. If it's anything to do with DOE, yeah.
and it
We'll
looks
figure
like
out
there's some
something.
resources in the chat. To Roella put down the curriculum.
Yeah, so a major, I guess, area of focus, or I guess it's a circle within the Hawaii Farm to School, Hui, dropping the name, sorry. It's Hawaii Farm to School now. They do focus on school garden curriculum, but it's not a top-down initiative. It just depends on the school that wants to adopt
Yeah,
practices, and
I understand.
they build and invest time into building that curricula for its students. There's a handful of schools across the state that's doing it, and they're leading the charge, but definitely the coalition is really looking to making it available for all schools, which is definitely challenging. But
Okay.
it's happening. Farm to School
Mhm.
is happening.
Yeah, but again, I just want everybody to understand, when you look at me, that the angle I'm coming from is deeper than that. I'm talking about changing the culture back to more respect for elders, for school teachers and admin, police, firemen, whatever, doctors. Just we're losing it. And Hawaii's following what the mainland trend is happening. They want to defund their police department and stuff, crazy things like that. So no respect, or they don't think they're of any value. But I just need that component where the parents will exercise or be like the therapist for the kids. After the kids learn have a lot of information experience at school, which is maybe most of their daytime learning capacity, just like how we go to work, and most of the time is spent at work versus at home. Well, when they go home, they need to practice, and they shouldn't see the opposite happening at home, such as, you know, swearing the head off to their kid. They receive disrespect, let's say, because there's no courtesy at home, or they don't. I've worked with a lot of low income housing. I worked with a lot of even rich people in rural Summit and Newtown, and a lot of them, very few will volunteer and help when they're in poverty status. Although I've always welcomed them and see if they can give input. They don't even have to volunteer, just come to meetings, but it's hard. So what it is to change that culture. I'm interested in changing through earth sciences kind of thing is this is so practical and so valued to me that we all came from pretty much farming community, you know, 150 years ago, and for us Hawaii plantation third, fourth generation people, you know, we know how to till the soil, what it takes, hard work, sore back. So, okay, yeah, let's talk more. I just wanted you guys to know if you can help me. I am complex. We're trying to do a lot of things,
I'm
along with Atid Jeffers too.
I'm wondering, based off what you're sharing, and also Kukui mentioned the culture, like you need admin support, and that there isn't that leadership
Mhm.
at the state level, and I'm wondering, I'm not involved in the farm to school networks, but are there people in the Department of Education who are involved in these conversations? And if not, like maybe there's somebody I should be inviting into this network.
Yeah,
Um,
we should.
last meeting, there were two representatives from DOE. They were at the meeting. So the last conversation is about forwarding contract, procuring local farm produce to schools. So we're supporting on that piece. I can find out his title, but yeah, he was involved in the farm to school meetings. And if you would like to invite them to this Hui, I can make the introduction.
Might be helpful. I mean, that's more relevant to if they're in that particular network, then might be more relevant to them, but but you know, this is just another, you know, group of people who are trying to help. So it could be helpful for them. Yeah. Thanks, Alice.
Yeah, Wes is the farm to school program coordinator. I'll send you his contact.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of times too, just for information, the schools will teach what they need to teach, do their job, and they will not overlap it into trying to get the parents involved, because that's not in their goals, or I don't know, it's a disconnect. You look at the most poverty schools, usually you have the smallest parent organization. They assume the parents are busy, but being a retired cable guy that goes into people's homes, they have the most time. To me, seriously, they do. If they're done taking care of the kids at infant, they have a lot of time, and they'll look for jobs, but you know what? A lot of times they're just home. So I want to change that too. They can come out and help, but they're not invited, first of all, on property. They're not really welcome. There's not much avenues or that kind of environment to get parents to help out, meaning help out with your child's homework, you know, like with the gardening goals, or you know, the plant they bring home, or whatever they're doing, that kind of thing. Just some simple like that. And then to come out to help with the fair or some kind of fundraiser, yeah, they don't have that. And I don't think they really encourage it. That's my experience in IAM. They don't encourage the parent involvement. They'll say it, and when they get inspected by I've got the group that inspects schools now to give them the accreditation. They force the parents to come and please do us a favor. They feed us lunch and all that, but that shouldn't even be that. Why are they now looking for people and then to say the right things, kind of like they want involvement at that time, but other than that, not really. They don't want parents involved because they're also a liability and a roadblock for them and a big critic because parents don't know what's happening in schools and how things are done.
That's definitely, there's going to be a breakout session, in
Yeah, so
today's
need to-
call. So
yeah.
if we have a school, school, I actually don't know if I made a breakout room specifically to school gardens, but I can add it if that's a conversation that we want to
Yeah,
keep having here. Like I said, the challenge of this network is not, if this is really relevant to farm to school and that work too, I think that's a space that I want to encourage people to be involved with. And then how does this network, also Food Gardens, think about supporting that network without overlap, without duplicating the work. So, we also talk about public housing gardens and city and county public lands and state lands. And so keep thinking about how we can support. I remember, I think it was, who was it at the in-person convening who told me, if for school gardens, it would be really helpful for this network to support in a way that's for places that don't have, for schools that don't have the ability to have gardens on site, and creating just more avenues for young children, youth to be involved in gardening activities if they don't have that directly on there. Yeah, thanks, Kukui. Yeah, building solidarity across other movements. So this feels like a really strong tether in this network. So, and that's it. Noelle, if I can also share the link to like getting involved in that network as well. I think maybe I should be attending. Better see the threads between them.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pop on. Assalamualaikum everyone. I'm off screen right now, but we are in a transitional stage of our Farm to School Hui. We just hired on 2 new staff. My name's Noelle Shaw. I'm the Farm to Early Care and Education Coordinator, and I was also just hired on maybe 3 months ago. So there is some transition right now, and a lot of our team is moving. But I do want to suggest that Uncle Wayne, you come and connect with us at Farm to School, because we're doing a lot of what you're talking about, and we're trying to work through those issues of having volunteers and kind of some block-ups that make gardening at school really difficult. And then the overlap here, I think, is with community gardening is for early childcare. We don't have a lot of space for that. And oftentimes what we learned recently from Kathy, who's the community garden coordinator for the island of Oahu, there'll be like 700 people on a wait list for a garden plot. But there's only 100 garden plots. So there's all these people who want to garden, they just don't have access to gardens. So how do we build a relationship and a connection between these 2 streams of people, of wanting gardeners and schools that need gardens, need garden help? And then how do we get the DOE on board, and how do we get parents to participate? So I did want to share really quickly that the Punana Leo, Aha Punana Leo has a very good strategy for parent participation, and they require parent participation as part of going to that kula, that preschool. So you have to clean the kula, you have to do all of these different events and things. And I think that's something that we're going to have to build back into community. And it really does start with the preschool age. As the state starts investing in early childcare, free early childcare, that's where we can bring it back, because parents are, I think, shifting to participating in those ways. And what also happens is the relationships between the younger and the older keiki, they'll learn that in these school spaces. So they can go and volunteer at, maybe my keiki goes to preschool in Kaimuki, and they go to Kaimuki's school garden for a field trip. And there's that pilina between the older and the younger sibling that's taught to us very much so in Hawaii, how we take care. So Uncle, I hear you. It's coming. We're trying, and we just have to open more of those doors and bring down those resources to facilitate those things happening. So mahalo nui, everyone.
Mahalo, Noelle. All right. Anything else to add to defining key terms or mapping garden projects. Okay, then we can move into breakout groups. This time, I really need to be better at tracking who's involved in what space. So I created a spreadsheet. I'm going to link it in the chat. And look, there isn't even school in this one, so I can add. There.
I'm
A
so
column
glad
for
you did that, Anna. I was just thinking, what are the resources we all are pooling together, you know, and then that can kind of help guide or figure out how this network wants to function together. Because if you know what resources you have, you know what goals you want to happen, it kind of helps with the thinking process. I'm glad you put that together.
Yeah, this is a place to put name, which area you can put your name on multiple columns. But then, yeah, Ro, if we're able to like see who's in what space and who's interested, then we don't, first of all, I've been sending emails to the whole network, way too many. So it's helpful to have just a group that I can send, you know, interest area specific information to. And then, so if you want to be connected to these particular areas, please put your name in the columns. And then, you know, feel free to attend whichever breakout room is. Yes, there are 90 people on the email. There are a lot. Today's actually one of the smallest turnouts, and I hope that's because people are at the New Now site visit or the Fest Pack. But we do usually have a pretty strong attendance and a lot of people who are interested in being involved who aren't always in the call. I will open, so we'll take, since we're 18, so if there are rooms that have just one person in them, maybe wait a minute, see if anyone else shows up, and then feel free to attend another room, just depending on the interest of the people present today. So, and then I'm going to add a school garden room. It's going to be called School Gardens. Options, okay. I hope, I believe, oh yeah, allow participants to choose room. Okay. So hopefully this works this time. It's 9:43. We have about 15 to 20 minutes to be in this rooms, and the goal is to continue to connect on these subjects about identifying, like we did in the in-person convening, identifying what are the challenges facing this particular interest area. Having, again, like that, when go back to the core components of collective impact, that first one is having a common understanding of the problem and then creating a joint approach to solving it. So let's spend some time understanding the common challenge, or having a common understanding of the challenge. And I'll pop in and out. And I think you have a tool also if you want to flag the host, if you want me to come in there if you have any questions. Is that, I'll open the rooms and something should pop up where you can select the one you want to be in. Any questions before I do that? Okay. Opening the rooms, choose whichever one you want. Okay, it seems to be working this time.
Anna, can you put me wherever? Because I don't have options in front of me.
Okay. Do you want to tell
Thank
me which
you.
one you're interested in, or do you?
Wherever you think I could be helpful.
Sure. How about policy?
I'm not seeing any options either that possible.
Okay.
Put me in the
Yes.
group if possible.
Which one, Kima? Sorry.
Funding, please.
Funding? Okay. Anybody else want me to send them off to a room?
Yeah, I'd like that data and mapping. I don't
Okay.
see
Okay.
option for the
There you go.
Thanks.
Me too, and I need to be roomed, housed.
Do you want to go into the school
Mm,
garden group?
Sure. Thank you.
Mhm.
Hey, Anna, sorry.
No
Something just
problem.
came up. Yeah, I'll join now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. Did that work out? The breakout rooms, or did everyone have a chance to discuss? I saw one room with 2 people. I hope that was fruitful, nevertheless. Sometimes it can be
It
even
was me
more
and
so.
Kima. It was good.
Great. And Kima, I don't know if we've actually met yet, so I'm gonna connect with you offline, but welcome to the network. Thank you for being here. Everybody else I know. So could I ask did everyone see my broadcast message about taking notes?
I attempted to take notes, Anna.
Even just a summary of what was being discussed is helpful, since there's no recording of the breakout room. So awesome, some bullet point notes. That's great. How about we have a volunteer from the public housing gardens group to just share back briefly what was discussed?
Okay, I'll volunteer. So we shared some, success, some good news, as well as some challenges. The good news are the city and county, Jason's office, they were able to secure this contract, this grant for assessment on those existing gardens built in 2020. So this assessment will be very helpful just to see what gardens are still being utilized, how the space looks like, and what is the engagement level. So it will be very helpful, I think, just for other, including public housing sites as well. That's the good news. And the challenges shared by Ati is how to get access to those land. And we have the shared challenges working with Hawaii Public Housing Authority. Is just the liability is a big concern for the site managers, and how to get approval to create food gardens on the site, and how to get approval allowing volunteers to access to that space supporting those gardens. I think those are the challenges, the main challenges we discussed. Please chime in more, Adi and Jason, if I missed anything.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. Yeah, it is a challenge. We found out, folks are directly working with them. We're kind of on the side working with community, understanding all this, and just the idea of, maybe we even threw out, with volunteers clearing spaces, but if they decide to guerrilla garden anyway and grow their own food, we're not going to stop. But I think the access part is hard. You know, we're starting the community group, the Friends of Makalapa Park, and we could probably mobilize volunteers to go in there and clean it up, because it's really awful in there. It's just so neglected. I think with a little care, people will see that. They already know that we're working at the park. Now we're going into their area as a community group. I think it would be welcomed by residents, but you know, how do we get that sanctioned by HPA without getting in trouble? You know, can we just go in there and just create a volunteer service part and just clean it up? Because we could do that in a heartbeat, but are we going to have any issues with them afterwards about, oh, what happened here? Even if it's a good thing. And like I said, clear areas, there's so much fallow land, there's abandoned buildings, all kinds of stuff, but there is land to grow food. If they choose to do that, then let's let them do it. But you know, how do we help with intervention from community at this point? You know, that's what they really need.
Well, the jurisdiction question is super interesting because Makalapa is city, and then you have the state public housing adjacent. It reminds me a little bit of what's happening at the Kahuia Park Terrace, right? There's that public housing site, and then there's like the guerrilla gardening that's happening outside the fence, I believe. You know, on a map, there's a line delineating like who has jurisdiction and what the rules are, but like in real life, it's just nature. So
And community intervention, they're doing it on their own
yeah.
without, you know, and you know, you don't want to encourage that, but you also want to make sure they have an avenue that's, you know, more clear. You know, there's obstacles there, and we just work through it anyway as community. You know, that builds our resilience, but then again, it doesn't sit well with the powers that be, and can be taken away so easily after all that. And that is disheartening to communities when they try to do things on their own that are good, then it gets taken away for whatever reason. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and that's why there's, you know, we're trying to formalize those relationships so that it doesn't get pulled out, you know. That's a story as old as time here in the city. I'll say that much, but
Well, this is a great group to address so many issues, Anna. I thank everyone for participating. I think, you know, it's so needed, and I hope we can keep this up.
thank you, Ate. Yeah, thank you for being here. And I know that this does go till 10:30, and some people will have to leave at the hour. So if you need to go, you know, totally fine. Thank you. Aloha kakui. We'll see you next time. And then, like I said, at 10:30, I will have to log off. But if folks are interested at that point, continue the conversation, I'll make somebody else a co-host. All right, somebody from the, look at my screenshot here, from the data and mapping, want to give a brief summary of what was discussed. I was in that room, so I can. Why don't I just quickly, I took notes. So we had Leanne from the City and County Community Gardening Program, which is so great that you're here, at Kaneohe. And we did introductions because we hadn't met. So we spent a lot of time doing that, and Leanne sharing her role over there and being involved for so long in the community garden program. We had Shannon Tanaka, who shared about the mapping project for early childhood education and related farming and gardening projects that could support those providers, which we've talked about before and have notes about. So please check those in the data and mapping working document notes that I linked to. And then we have Kavehi K.S. Scott with Parasweet. I keep wanting to say Pearl Sweet, Parasweet, who shared an update about a needs assessment, a social needs assessment and survey to residents at a gardening project at a public housing site. I forget the name of which one that was, but basically asking participants what their perceived benefits of that gardening program is so far, and also those who aren't participating, if they would be interested in participating, and so that they could potentially expand the garden beds there. Parasweet is involved in this as a sort of data collection and data minded people, so that's really helpful. especially with regards to social determinants of health. And I'm, encouraging anyone who, especially those who are data minded, to add to that document. It's actually in the mapping. It's not in the, I think it's in defining key terms, which is a little confusing. Maybe I should bring it over. I'm going to link it here again. At the bottom of page 3, it does say, attributes to be captured when we're like collecting information about all these different kinds of projects, so that we can maybe even design a survey when we reach out to these projects to share with us maybe how many people they're serving, or what kind of programs they have, or what zip codes they serve, et cetera, et cetera. All righty. Anybody from the funding, Alex and Kima?
Kima, if it's okay, I can share the couple notes I took. So I work for the city, and so I was talking to Kima about me new to this role, trying to figure out exactly what the city can do in terms of funding and support, and what's helpful and what's not helpful. And so don't really have any updates to that, but just being transparent about my kind of like learning and yeah. And Kima was talking about the awesome project that she's working on with Better Block Hawaii and installing some gardens and fruit trees on Rice Street in Lihue, Kauai. And it was mostly talking story about the inherent value in the work of gardening that gets disconnected. Similarly, maybe to Hi-Fi's work with their gardens in public housing spaces, the challenge of maintenance after a garden is installed when funding runs out. And I think Kima, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kima, but questions and wonderings about how to stop the boom and bust, or the feast and famine of grant funding, and find something more sustainable and more long lasting. And how to just keep the movement of gardening sustainable in terms of food access and health for Kapuna and for community members.
Awesome. Moving along to policy group.
I think I'm the only one left, sadly. So let's see if I can do this. But we had a nice, very short discussion. I really want to talk more with everyone, but we had Navin from the Division of Urban Forestry with Parks and Rec, and we had Rufino with the CNHA, and Rufino was talking about some, kind of federal farm bill priorities that he's been supporting, specifically getting kapuna crops included in SNAP for DOE purchasing. But then we had a real quick little discussion about land back movements and kind of trying to codify those through policy, because that's actually what Navin is working on. And so he was talking about these guerrilla gardening projects on the windward side, I believe, of Oahu, which were highly productive community food forests that were shut down by the county, or one was shut down, I believe, by the county. So he's trying to work to create, kind of set in the policy, the rights of community groups to manage public lands, I believe public lands for that kind of use. And then Rufino said that he has the community contacts and can help Navin get the community backing for those priorities. So it was super quick, but that seemed like an important connection.
Awesome. Yeah, I got to talk to Navin. I'm going to be crammed into a car with him at 10:30 on our way to Kapolei, so I'll ask him some more. That's why he's not here now. Awesome. And then school gardens.
Okay, Noelle had to leave, just she and I. But I'm glad I hooked up with her because we're gonna meet, I guess, soon as possible. Too much to discuss online. And when we did discuss about schools, I guess our focus would be, of course, the massive public schools. They have massive real estate that can be used, and we discuss about the existing plots that used to be used and are defunct. In fact, it pretty much disappeared by now. And because I grew up in Aiea, went to the same schools my kids went through, I seen the total cycle of how it went from something to nothing and how everything got data driven. So we did mention things like enabling parents, because they already have some charter schools where what did she say? Um, the parents are pretty much required to participate. Like there's 2 cleanup, I forgot where, I think that's the Kapolei one, that one is called, but I've heard about that one. You can't get your kid in right away because there's a waiting list. And but they have she said the culture is changing already at the charter school level, where the parents expect to participate. So those parents, when they go to the mainstream public schools, some of them are not quite inviting in my experience. I mean, still are like that. And I see a change though. After the COVID, something happened. I think they want to gather now. They can't wait, right? The kids want to play with each other. The parents want to talk story with other parents. I don't know what's going on, but there was a boom after I'd say in 2023. Yeah, yes, September last year. I've seen the fundraisers and everything double in size from 2019. So something's going on, and we should, embrace that.
Yeah.
And but again, we understand. I'm glad she's been doing this for a while, and she's, what is it, a full-time job for her to be? She's doing this stuff.
I believe so.
Yeah, when we get too many just volunteers, that doesn't quite work. Somebody's doing it full time. And I'm glad something like this is already in existence. We can enhance it in a big way.
Thanks, Wayne.
Well,
Yeah. Okay, great. It sounds like I like that there are people who are, meeting each other in this space and planning to meet outside of it too. I think that's really great. I'm going to share my screen and just finish the call today with a little overview of my program, of the city and county's program, because I'm here a lot and I think there's a lot to share about it. If you're not able to stay on, that's totally fine. Lan, you can also chime in, but this is recorded, so folks can come after the fact and learn about it by rewatching. Let's see, share screen. All right. So Honolulu Recreational Community Gardening Program, HCRGP. This is the map of where our gardens are on Oahu. We have 10 and a half. The blue one is Mutual Lane. And the reason it's kind of the half garden is because they're very small. They're in a very residential area with no parking. So we don't really put it on our website. We don't promote them. They don't have the capacity to receive any more. And they're almost entirely self-run. They don't really contact our coordinator for maintenance or water or irrigation support. So it's very hands-off, but they are technically within our program on city land. The rest are almost all in the urban core, but then we have Wahiawa, Kaneohe, and Hawaii Kai community gardens. We have a new website. It's, I guess I can put that link in the chat. Where's the chat? Whenever I share a screen, the chat disappears. There it is. And that's where you can see the list of gardens, the number of plots they have, their location. The first one was Makiki Community Garden in 1975 under the Fawzi administration. It's housed within the Department of Parks and Recreation, Division of Urban Forestry, Honolulu Botanical Gardens, and then us. So interestingly enough, I think just because of who was available and interested at the time of its founding, we had the program housed within our botanical gardens, even though there's not a lot of overlap between those. We have one community garden coordinator, that's Kate Eichstead. We hope to have more in the future because that's a lot of plots and a lot of people to be serving. But because we have, well, and the structure, the nature of this program, it's really volunteer run. Leanne's been a volunteer many times, meaning that each garden has their president, vice president, applications officer, maybe a secretary or right, yeah, and monitors, etc. There are all kinds of roles that emerge for each garden, treasurer, And they're all volunteer run. And some of them are, you know, at Wahiowa, for example, there's nearly 500 plots. And so that's run by someone almost like a full-time job. So it's very grassroots led program. The city really just supports irrigation issues, maintenance for maybe mulch on occasion, more operational. So like I said, about 10 community gardens, each, well, total about 1,230 plots, mostly concentrated in the urban core. It's an allotment style, meaning that people get a 10 by 10 plot, or the size varies between gardens, but most of them are about 100 square feet, whereas Wahiowa also an exception because they have 20 by 40 plots. And people basically get a permit to garden indefinitely that plot as long as they follow the rules. I can't click next slide. Once again. Okay, let's go like this. So this is just a series of photos to show the variation. We have Makiki, they have, you know, this green, parks green structures, kind of fencing around each plot, whereas Manoa has no fencing, so for the occasional, for like a trellis. We have Mo'ili'ili. This is Dole, which is on a slope. It's very small. Hawaii Kai looks very different. They're also very different in terms of ecology and like the climate of that area and what people grow. This one over here, this is, can you see my mouse? This is Mutual Lane. It's the one that's really, it's in a residential area. It's like, it used to be a house, I think, that got condemned, and then the land was donated to the city or something like that. There's Hawaii Kai, or sorry, Kaneohe, and then that's Wahiowa in the bottom right-hand corner. You can see it's massive. More variation in the kind of structures that you might find. We have different bulletin boards and raised beds and sheds. So they're all very unique. My program, or my position, was created about almost 2 years ago. It's a 2-year grant funded position to sort of assess the program, find, you know, where it can be modernized and improved, and also to think about how we might expand equitably. And so as part of my last couple of years, I've been, you know, identifying strengths, challenges, and opportunities. And some really big strengths about this program is that it's been around for almost 50 years. We have a 50th anniversary coming up that LAN is helping organize. And we haven't had a single garden that emerged in the program be taken away. So there's something about public lands that make these gardens more viable for long-term use. I've heard a lot of programs on the continent that have gardens that have come and gone because they're on private lands that change use. There's also some really strong place attachment. There are gardeners who have been here for decades, and they feel, you know, an ownership over their plot, which can cause some challenges, but I think it's also a strength in that people really care about this. There's a strong community interest. We have massive wait lists for a lot of the gardens, which is clearly it's a desirable program. We have a great growing climate in Hawaii. We can grow year round. There's no downtime. So it's amazing that we don't have more of this and compared to other cities, but you know, we're working on it. There's a lot of knowledge and expertise in the garden. So people really know how to grow food and grow other things really well. And that's resilience. And then, like I said, there's a lot of diversity in the gardens between each one, but also among them or within them, there's a lot of, we're doing a survey we just completed a survey to our community garden membership. And we find that there's people from all kinds of levels of income, all kinds of walks of life, different race and ethnicities. Like we have a very diverse membership. Although age is less diverse, but there's still some diversity. The average age of our community gardener is about 62. There are challenges with this program. We have one community garden coordinator. We don't have a lot of capacity. And then we have so much reliance on our volunteers to keep them running, and it's burdensome. Some of the activities that garden volunteers have to do, it's not easy. It's managing stacks of applications, or having to do conflict resolution, or you know, handing out plots and managing long wait lists. It can be really burdensome. So we're thinking about how we can restructure that. We have really outdated rules and regulations that we're in the process of updating. Growing climate is also a challenge because we don't have downtime to kind of refresh programs. And that also means plants continue to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger indefinitely, which also has issues if there isn't like a winter season where you can like clean your plot out. So that means we have more overgrowth. There's government bureaucracy and getting support for the gardens. That's an issue. And then there has been a lot of issues with fairness and oversight, with transparency of who's getting plots, with how funds are managed. And then, but that's, you know, again, an opportunity to, we're updating our rules, we're updating processes, we're hopefully going to digitize some of these processes. Because of my grant funded position, I'm able to finally give capacity to the department to think about these things, think about expansion, and then even providing support outside of community gardens. Like that's why I'm here, you know, helping facilitate with Hui Māla these statewide networks, this statewide network. I only have a few minutes left, but there's a few projects I'm working on that I mentioned updating the rules and regulations. That's mostly interesting to current gardeners, but we're overhauling our website with materials. So if you go into the website I put in the chat, and one of the tabs has resources, this is helpful for anybody really. It's not just for our current gardeners. Some of that information might be helpful for just gardeners in general. We are hosting an annual leadership retreat for our officers. Kate and I piloted that for the first time in January, and we're going to do it again. Like I said, I'm doing a survey, or we completed a survey. We're still in the process of analyzing results, and that's going to be really interesting. Something I will definitely share with this network, because we asked questions about, for sure, to like improve our program, but also about food security and social cohesion. So the benefits of gardening. We have the 50th anniversary in 2025, and Leanne is spearheading a project on understanding the history of the program. So that's really exciting. I put that there because I want to be involved. I really do. I created a checklist for people who want to create community gardens in partnership with Department of Parks and Rec. That's on our website on the homepage. This is also and I'll skip down to memorandum of agreement. We're trying to draft a template agreement so that if an organization wants to run a community garden or a communal garden or food forest on public lands, we already have a pathway for someone to at least see what that memorandum of agreement would be like and see, well, is this a good fit or not? And then we would refine it once. Having the template would mean less going back and forth with our legal team. So I'm working on that template now. And then this guide to creating community gardens, Kima left, but I was working with Better Block Hawaii on that, and I will be once again, hopefully, coming by the fall, bringing that back to this network to get support. And essentially, it's a guide that showcases all these examples of community gardens across Hawaii that are that demonstrate like different models for how you organize plots, or maybe it's communal style, maybe it's on public lands versus private lands, with advice on how to approach a private landowner or a public landowner, how to maybe design your governance model. Whatever it is, this guide is supposed to just be all encompassing for Hawaii. This exists in other parts of the country, but it doesn't exist here. So we're working on that. And then this geospatial equity analysis is basically a suitability map of where we should expand our program. And that's something I've spoken to regarding the mapping project. Okay, that was kind of a speed round. Alex was involved in this this initial mapping project of where we might want to expand to. And yes, okay, so we only have a couple minutes left, but the next convening will be in July 12th, and I'm going to do it in the afternoon. That's why it's in red. It's different. I want to be able to accommodate other availability. So keep an eye out for that calendar invite. And then August, it's maybe time for another in-person meeting. So we got to talk about that. If you have an idea for a venue, CNHA was so gracious in offering a venue and food last time. So I'm going to try and find another way to feed the attendees. So if you have any ideas for venue or for catering that I should look into, like, please let me know. Okay. in the last minute or two, just any final words? If you have questions for me about my program, I apologize for not making space for it. You definitely can email me. I see some things in the chat here, some asks in the chat too. Composting and food waste reduction cooperative agreements. Ooh.
Anna, you and I can talk later about this if you want. I just saw it come through and saw that community gardens is one of the areas that funding could be used for. So I thought of you.
Nice. Yeah. Maybe I'll share this even with the individual gardens. They could. Maybe the community garden council. Thank you for that. Okay, let's check in on that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Anna.
Does anybody want to stick around for carryover? Should I make anybody a host? No, unable. Okay. I am getting a phone call, which probably means I have to go. So thank you all so much for being here. Goodbye. Have a great weekend. Stay tuned for the follow-up email with all the resources. We'll be in touch. Mahalo nui.